Welcome, everybody.
Hey, hey. Good boy, Tucker.
Work smarter where you want.
This is learning at its most fun.
Hello, everybody. My name is Austin Johnson. I'm a subject matter expert and trainer here at Redtail Technology. And thank you for joining us for yet another Best Practice Partner Spotlight. Today, we have fpPathfinder joining us. Right. With that said, I'd like to welcome you to Becoming a More Diligent Advisor with Checklists and Flowcharts. So oftentimes, a meeting with a client or prospect is spent gathering information about planning needs. Wouldn't it be nice if you can already have that information before the meeting? Well, today we're going to learn about fpPathfinder's interactive checklists and its integration with Redtail to gather, sort, and prioritize information before the meeting even happens. And so we are going to share best practices on how to create meetings that move your clients forward. And so joining me from fpPathfinder, we have Mike. Mike, good morning.
Hey, good morning. Thanks for having me on here.
Yes, definitely happy to have you back. We had you on about a year ago, and we've had tremendous response from our fpPathfinder integration and the wonderful flowcharts that make planners' lives so much easier. Mike, before we jump to the presentation, I just wanted to, if there was anybody on the call that's not familiar with fpPathfinder and the service that you provide, can you just briefly tell us about fpPathfinder and how your company came to be?
Oh, yeah, sure. Let me first just say, my name is Michael LaCour. I am the co-founder, and I'm also a financial advisor. And so, yeah, I think as Austin, you and I were kind of going over this, there is a great opportunity here to bring folks up to speed about what it is that fpPathfinder does. And also, once you kind of learn a little bit more, kind of get brought up to speed there, then there's some really cool enhancements that we've done to build on the integration that we launched about a year ago. So just to kind of kick things off, we kind of recognize that our job as advisors is really, really complicated. There's so many important rules. There's all these regulations and strategies to stay on top of that advisors just run the risk of simply forgetting a planning issue. And just when we think we have it all figured out, the rules and the planning issues, they change. I mean, just look at what we're dealing with right now. We've got this pending legislation that, oh man, how are we ever going to be able to keep track of all that stuff? Like, I'm still having issues just digesting what happened with Secure Act. And so then all of a sudden, there is a whole new list of planning issues to address with clients. And at the end of the day, the advisor is spending a lot of time researching and studying just to stay on top of all the issues. Not to mention all the time that is spent working with each client to make sure none of their individual planning opportunities are missed. And this is what fpPathfinder really tries to address. And we do that with two different tools. The first is checklists. These help advisors identify financial planning issues. We have about 45 checklists or so available right now, and they're really designed to help clients and be more efficient in your own business. Some checklists cover life events like issues to consider before retiring or issues to consider before getting married or having a child. And we also have other checklists that can be used each and every year, such as issues to consider during an annual client review meeting or issues to consider at the end of the year. This is an example of one of our checklists. It's like half of an example. Most of our checklists, they're 2 pages long. I'm only showing you the front page here. They're not operation-based checklists. These focus on the planning issues for the advisor. Each one is developed so you can easily share it with a client or incorporate it into a meeting to identify those planning opportunities, or use it to gather more information about the client and to prioritize next steps. See, as an advisor, using these checklists with your client allows you to walk through these very complicated situations, and it demonstrates the client all of the aspects you are actively considering for their finances. because what we do is complex. There's all these moving parts. And so checklists can be just an excellent way to demonstrate all the things you're doing and looking at when you're going to help your client. And so the Redtail integration, we'll get more into this later, it's available for our Premier members. And all of these checklists are now available in an interactive versions. So you could download a PDF version to physically give to your client, or print it out and give to your client, or you could email it over to them, or you could complete them online or share a link to that checklist with your client so they can complete the checklist on their own. And we'll go through that in a little bit more in just a bit. The next tool that we focus on are flowcharts. All right. Right now we've got about 45, and we actually keep adding 1 to 2 new resources every single month. So the library keeps growing. Flowcharts help to illustrate the decision points clients must go through for many different strategies. For example, what must the client consider before she rolls over a dormant 401k? And then we've got other flowcharts that help to summarize the rules, such as rules around making an IRA contribution or making an HSA contribution. This is just a very, very brief list of some of our flowcharts that we have. Lots of advisors are using these resources to answer questions about retirement accounts and Social Security and healthcare. And if you go onto our website, you can actually see a summary of all of the different checklists and flowcharts. And this is an example of one of the flowcharts that we have. I share this one in particular because I personally struggle to answer this question for my clients. I did when I first got started, and I still do. I guess as a new advisor, I just couldn't keep all those rules straight for IRA and Roth IRA contributions. I try to answer the client's question, but it seemed more often than not, I had to call the client back and clarify their situation. You know, maybe they have earned income, but their spouse didn't, or other way around, or maybe they had lots of earned income, but weren't participating in an employer retirement plan. And so out of desperation, I put together a flowchart to help me guide my clients and stay up to date and be confident I was giving accurate advice in a clear, consistent manner. But then I come to find out that it's not just new advisors that need checklists and flowcharts. Even as a more experienced advisor, it can be easy to forget a rule or just not be aware of a change that has been made for a planning topic, like IRA contributions. And recently we did a member survey, and we found out that the vast majority of our advisors have been in the business for at least 5 years. So advisors who use the CRM integrations that we offer, they can also leverage the branding functions to the white labeling of their checklists and flowcharts for both the interactive and PDF versions. So that way, when you are working with a client, they don't see fpPathfinder, they're seeing the client is going to see their advisor's logo or name on these resources. So before we jump into what we're doing on the integration side, this is just a summary of some of the use cases that we're finding that our advisors are using. They can be used to assist in the decision-making process, or as a quick introduction to a new concept that you might be unfamiliar with. They allow you to answer client questions faster or save time by having a structured and systematic way to gather client information, record it, and follow up as needed. We're finding dozens of these, and new ones seem to come up. All right, so Austin, that's kind of the long way of explaining how we came to be and what we're doing. I think the reason a lot of people are here is to just learn more about our improved integration.
Yes, absolutely. And Mike, if I can, I wanted to hit on a point that you made, and that is that these checklists and these flowcharts are not operation focused. So sometimes I've gotten this question, like, what's the difference between a Redtail workflow and the checklists and flowcharts that fpPathfinder provide. And it is very much so that a Redtail workflow is very operations focused. It's what you and your team need to do in order to provide a service to a client.
Exactly. Yes. So all right. So in essence, client calls up and says, my spouse just passed away. What do I need to do? Two things immediately pop up. There's a bit of an operations component of checking account registrations, maybe moving money from changing like account titles and things like that. And then there's also going to be the planning aspect that comes up. And so the workflows can help to create that fork. And so you could have a series of operation-based tasks or processes built out in the workflow, but now you could build out a separate part or a separate workflow that's going to go down to more of the planning element. So get the meeting scheduled, and we're going to go over the checklist of issues to consider if your spouse passed away. So in terms of structure, the workflow becomes the overarching vehicle or element to tie a lot of different functions together. The checklists and our flowcharts are really geared for the financial advisor to use to guide conversations, or just to use it as a backup to make sure that they've covered all of the different planning points. All right, so very much it nests underneath a workflow, to the point where advisors that are really baking this into their workflows, there's a way where there's certain links that we have to the resources that will never change. And you can copy that link and put it into your workflow. So if you have a workflow for a client passing away, that particular step will take you to an fpPathfinder resource that's always going to be up to date. All right, does that make sense?
Yes, very well said.
All right.
So let's talk next about how Redtail and fpPathfinder work together.
Sure.
The integration.
All right, so here's kind of where we are with this. Let's say a client calls up and says, I just lost my job. What do I do? What a lot of advisors are doing, they put the client on hold and frantically search on Google for guidance. Maybe the information is up to date, maybe it's complete, and maybe it's accurate. And maybe the advisor types a note into their CRM when the call's over. This integration really changes that. So our Premier members can launch a checklist and provide accurate guidance to their client within just a few clicks. And I'll show you all of this in a second. The checklists can be completed entirely online. The advisor can just check boxes and add notes for each of the questions that we ask. And when the advisor is done, they can send the completed checklist note back to the client record with one click. So the advisor is able to gather more information about their client, and there's a record of that conversation, and helps the advisor when they have to go follow up in the subsequent weeks or months. So to take a bit of a change of course here, instead of just walking through the screenshots, I watched the movie Fun with Dick and Jane like a month ago, and I was struck with what happens with this individual. This is a movie that came out, well, I guess it was like 15, 20 years ago, and it's based on a much older movie. Essentially, Dick Harper here, played by Jim Carrey, goes through on a big roller coaster with his employer, and he ends up just having horrible luck. And now it's with Jim Carrey, so it's going to be funny. But I just kind of imagine what happened if all of this whole situation, everything he went through, he was consulting with his financial advisor along the way. And so imagine this whole thing playing out. Dick Harper, he gets this giant promotion at the company he works for called Globodyne. And after he celebrates, he calls you to discuss some of the planning issues that he thinks he's going to have to deal with. So now, you being the advisor, you're getting the call, following best practices. This is what Austin and everybody else at Redtail preaches, is the first thing you should do when the client calls is you pull up the contact record at Redtail, within Redtail. And so from within Redtail, you can make a couple of clicks, and you can pull up the integration to see a bunch of checklists. And these checklists are sorted into several different categories to make it easy for you to find the right checklist. Once you find the right checklist, you can click on it, and now it pulls up fpPathfinder's interactive checklist. Right. Now you can begin to go through, ask the client questions about a situation, what that promotion might mean for him or his life goals. So it's forcing you to start to ask those right questions to get the information you're going to need to make sure you're not missing something. It allows you to check the boxes. You can add notes so you can follow up down the road. And when you're done with this, you can click one button and it sends it all over into the contact record into Redtail. Now, it might be hard to see on your screens here, but one of the new improvements that we've added is that any of the planning issues that were identified kind of get bubbled up to the top of the note. So when you log in, you see that, yeah, we've asked like these 20, 25 different planning questions over here. The client only answered yes to 4 or 5 of those. So those get bubbled up to the top, and everything else that's really, you're determining that there isn't an issue, that gets buried down below. So you don't have to worry about missing something. The next improvement we made deals with tasks. So all of the planning issues that were identified and summarized and like bubbled up to the top of the note, well, they're also getting assigned into one single task and marked as research and address possible issues for follow-up. And now, if there were some questions where maybe Dick Harper didn't know the answer to them, and you didn't know either, say, we'll figure that out later on. We're just going to leave that question blank, okay? Those will all get summarized into a second single task, so you can follow up and then make sure that you get those questions answered in the future. So there's a few reasons why we wanted to make these changes. First of all, we wanted to make sure nothing is falling through the cracks or getting lost inside a note. It can save you some time because fpPathfinder is creating the tasks and to-dos for you instead of you having to do it. And you can leave questions intentionally unanswered, and there's a very clear mechanism for you to then follow up on this into the future. And finally, if you're just part of a team and you've got other advisors that you're working with, this is a really easy way for you now to assign these tasks to other people on your team to handle. So going back to Dick and his promotion, you realize that, hey, he's got this huge raise and it's now risen to the level where Jane can leave the job that she hates. Everybody's thrilled. She immediately quits her job. And the next day, Globodyne tanks. It goes out of business. There's allegations of fraud. Dick calls you up in a panic. Despite everything that you had recommended, he never diversified any of his company's stock. He has tons of deferred comp. Everything's basically worthless. He doesn't know if he's got 1 penny at all. He's so flustered, he can't even talk with you right now about this. So you say, I'm going to send you a checklist through email. It's just a link. You're going to click on it later on tonight or tomorrow. I want you to go through and fill out what you can on this. Don't worry about trying to get everything complete. I just want to gather some information from you right now. And send it to me now, as soon as you can. I'm going to take a couple of days to make sure that I prepare for this. And then early next week, we're going to talk, and I'll be fully prepared to provide guidance to you on this. So this means the bulk of your meeting is spent discussing strategies instead of gathering information. So you can email him a link to this specific checklist. This is what he would see. You would see it's now branded to match your firm. You could have your logo in the upper right corner. You can put in a custom like welcome message. And there's also a section down below, which I don't show here, where you can put in a disclaimer as well. When he finishes the checklist, you will receive an email that he's completed the checklist. And then that whole checklist note goes into Redtail, as well as those tasks will get assigned like I covered before. But unfortunately, the collapse of Globodyne led to this massive recession. Jobs are hard to come by, and the rest of the movie basically involves them turning into a life of crime, trying to make ends meet. The movie basically ends with Dick getting a job finally, about a year later. And so you invite both Dick and Jane to come in and discuss the situation in person. And so they come in, and you have now this checklist. It's a PDF version that you can share with them, and or email it to them afterwards. And when you ask, "Oh, you got the new job, where are you going to work?" His answer is Enron. So the cycle is going to keep repeating with him. So that basically wraps it up. So since we launched that integration initially, we made some enhancements to the note itself to bubble those issues, those possible planning issues up to the top. We created a couple of different tasks to make sure that those planning opportunities don't fall through the cracks any other way. And we introduced the share a link function, where an advisor could send a branded version of their interactive checklist to a client so they can try to gather a little bit of information before the client meeting. And this quote here, this really just summarizes everything that we're trying to do. The checklists have doubled my client meeting efficiency by adding structure and a detailed process to our meetings. So that's about it, Austin.
Thanks, Mike. I love that Dick finally found a new position at Enron. Poor guy. The cycle's going to repeat, right? And that's why we need good financial advisors to help us navigate the financial complexities of life. So really good example there. I love the storyline that you followed there. It really illustrated why fpPathfinder is a must for financial planning firms.
Thanks so much for joining us today for this particular session. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to give us a call at 800-206-5030, option 3 for support, or just shoot us an email over to support@redtailtechnology.com. Thanks a lot and have a great day.